Hello, welcome back to Pre-Primary Sources. I'm here again with Lisa Murphy and Tiffany Pearsall,
Hello.
Hello.
and we're talking about Bloom again, because why not?
Why not?
It's summer and the flowers be blooming.
That's right.
I'm in the desert. The flowers are all shriveling up and dying now. We had our time, but
Yeah. I'm actually in Florida and I did some recording out on the porch this morning with a cute little pink outfit on, just so people realize I do own more than black shirts. And sorry, guys, I sweated right through the darn thing. So you get the usual black shirt, Lisa. I looked cute a little bit this morning, but yeah, it's like the hair, you know what I'm saying? It's humid, right? We are all from three different um temperature zones, but yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Nothing's blooming right now here except
but
my
our
love for
brains.
the topic.
There we go, bringing it back.
Yeah, nice segue. Nailed it.
But yeah, so I was thinking back to our last episode, and there was a disconnect in the excitement, right? Like Lisa, you talked about discovering fire, right? When you found bloom and going, yes, this is exactly what I've been seeing children do in play. And then I think all of the time that we were talking about adults, and that was really my primary thought bringing this up too, was just it feels at this point like checking boxes to say, yes, the adults are learning, which we have fought against for children for so long, and yet we still need to demonstrate to whoever is funding these professional learning events that the teachers are learning. And so, where is our disconnect between the potential of adults to learn and children to learn? And why can't we trust anybody to just do that?
And I had a big thought during our little pre-hit record little chat that I wanted to save for this discussion because I want you two to help me tease it apart. I personally feel like I would bend over backwards and I'll point out any link murder board connection to an adult who doesn't see the what's happening when a kid is engaged in play. Like I'll do, I wish I didn't have to, right? We all know the Mimi Bronsky Shenfield quote that great will be the day when we no longer have to defend what we do, but right now we do, so we have to be armed with an arsenal of information. And I wish I didn't have to, but I'm willing to because I'm so willing to protect the play. I think there's an element of like we're grown. Like, come on, man.
Mhm.
Like, really? I have to connect the dots for you. And I also think there's something about the funding piece that irks me. And a little bit, I think that's adjacent with the nobody really believes we know what we're doing anyway. So I have to keep using these big, sexy words so that people think that we know what we're talking about. So that's where my brain is with a like half-baked thought mindset with that.
I think this is why I liked Fink so much. I think the idea of building in an element for the adults of why we care about this and why they should care about this is connected to what you were just saying. Because I do hear what you're saying about like, you're grown, this is your job, let's do it. And I do think that relevant to our field, like there's not a lot of respect, there's not a lot of prestige, and there's not a lot of barriers to entry. And so we do kind of need to try to make people care.
Well, and I think I was thinking more outside the circle. I wasn't necessarily talking
Okay.
about the people receiving. Like I'm not talking about the
Oh,
butts in
yeah,
the
yeah.
chairs that Saturday. I'm talking about the pre-gig hoops that somebody had to jump through for to appease people who aren't even going to be there, on
Yes.
that Saturday. And now meanwhile these people are stressing out and jumping through hoops and what do we need to call this so that they'll get credit? And like at the end of the day, I always wonder like did they even read any of it? And I see this person
Right.
over here doing all this work to make sure it counts so that the people who do show up get that credit, right? That to show I am committed and willing to make that investment in my own knowledge and growth and development. But like, who was it really for? All that hoop jumping.
Right. All that hoop jumping. I think about this all of the time. And that idea about administrative bloat, that there is so like each administrator, each higher up boss in this chain needs to do something that's different for this organization, that's different for this organization. And if they want to get paid to do that administration for this thing, then they have to do. And so like we've expanded this piecemeal program so spread thin that suddenly there's like so many hoops. and no way to get the work done efficiently. And that's not to say I'm a Doge supporter, but like at a certain point, the hoops become the product, right? And like if we're process-based educators and we're actually trying to educate these adults, then like we need to be doing that same thing of translating their learning experiences for grown-ups at an administrative level. And that requires an administrative level that supports that kind of feedback.
Well, and I also think that turns into what hoop do I need to jump through when that person shows up for an evaluation day? And then what hoop am I jumping through when this person shows up? And yet, out of one side of our early childhood mouth, we're talking about consistency, but our actual practice is more like, well, it really kind of depends on the day of the week and whose car just pulled up in the parking lot as to what my focus is going to be today. And I mean, that just makes me bang my head against the wall and want to just throw my hands up, just that amount of inconsistency, which I think I already brought you off topic. So sorry, somebody pull it back.
No, you're right there because we can't trust learners. We can't trust the head
Mm-hmm.
honchos can't trust that the learners will take from a session what they need. And so we need to say they will get X, Y, and Z. And look, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And so clearly they are evaluating and analyzing even though they are sitting there, right? There's only,
Mm-hmm.
we can't trust learners of any age to do
You're saying that's
what
like the
we want.
perception. We feel like
Yes,
we're not
right, yeah.
able
Yes.
to, which is why it's so rogue when, like, okay, so after 30 years, maybe I've done this a handful of times where it's clear that the audience doesn't need what the people booked me thought that they needed. And so I'd like take us on a big old detour. And then all of a sudden you see them leaning in, right? You see all that body language that's telling you that these adult learners are like, okay, I'm here now because this is actually timely and relevant to me. And, having to know when to put something aside because the audience is showing you, whether they're kids or grown-ups or your staff.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
even maybe even at a staff development training that we had our agenda as the director or the owner, but clearly there's something in the room that needs to be discussed. Am I, as an adult learner, able to put my needs and my ego to the side and pay attention to what really needs to happen here? And that's trust. It's all trust.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So
Yeah.
when did that break down? I mean, that's a whole other probably part three, but when did we ever trust
Hmm.
the people doing this job? Did we ever trust kids? How
Ooh,
far
that's a
back in
good
the
question.
Wayback Machine would we have to go?
And I feel like we're talking pre-industrial revolution at this point, too.
Yeah, we used to trust kids enough to build our weapons, man.
Yeah.
Oh, not to say that's a good thing, but yeah.
Right.
Uh,
But I mean,
yeah.
I wonder if you can have these not to get bogged down by those big questions, but I think we at least need to acknowledge that was there a time, or has this always been the lay of the land? Has there always been this like element of this through line? That's my new buzzword this week. A through
Ooh.
line of in various topics, like of a lack of trust. Is that one of those through lines in early childhood, in professional development, in
Is
learning?
the lack of trust tied to social class? Is there inherent value? Were we talking about, I was talking about this with somebody and it might have been you guys and it might not have
We were
been
texting
about,
about it.
yes, yes. So the
Yes. Yeah.
having different interests that have such heavy cultural connotations with them.
Well, I think if a
And
person
some
doesn't
people
trust
can be trusted to
themselves,
pursue them.
well,
Hmm.
if I don't trust that I can, and I'm really speaking not as myself here, but they, the general you, the general I, if I am in a quote unquote position of authority in a classroom and the kids, high schoolers, middle schoolers, college students want to talk about something or are showing me that they need something and I know nothing about it, depending
Mhm.
on where I am in my own personal growth and development, personal and professional growth and development, I'm either going to sit in that place of discomfort of not knowing and see where it goes and still not feel like I need to be the boss, or I'm going to rein it back to my area, right? So I think Liz, 100% in some environments, whose interest counts,
Right.
who gets to talk, I saw an article, who gets to cry, who's allowed to do that. Oh, it was very powerful. I'll email it to you after. But yeah, and that might not be a lack of trust, but it might be a lack of experience or a need to be in control,
Hmm.
worried.
Right. If we go off topic now, what else is going to happen?
Right? That vulnerable, like, oh God, I've lost control. And maybe that's not a bad thing every now and again to see what out of control looks like.
I think
'Cause-
there's also this piece of proof that we need to wrap into it that I think speaks back to like when did we ever trust kids? Like our education system has so fundamentally been built on this provability. Like, can you prove that you know the things, therefore we know it's working,
Mhm.
right? Like if it's viewed as this intervention and not this social support at a base level, then like we're never going to go off topic because we have to prove we know the things. And
Tiff,
that's the only value that we hold.
when you were talking, Tiff, I saw in my head like the old bucket, what I actually saw was
Hmm.
an empty paint can, and the teacher or the
Hmm.
grown up sees their job as filling it up because that's measurable, right? And that to the powers
Yeah.
that be, it counts. Then I did my job, you did yours, and we can go on our merry way. And anything extra we do after, right? Because the bucket's full. So now, right, the learning's done. So now we can go do something something else. I mean, these are some of those age-old questions. So like at what point do we get a new bucket? At what point do we get rid of the bucket? At what point do we
Yeah.
get new people who decide what buckets are important?
I feel like this is where we get to
And
the
that's
like, what is the worst case scenario, right? Like all the research that's like, the lower quality early childhood programs, right? From what I've been reading about them, roughly equivalent. So when they're not directly causing harm, right? Abusive environments, dangerous environments. Baseline of a not high quality program, roughly equivalent to staying home with a parent or other related caregiver. There's not a, we can talk about high quality, quote unquote high quality early childhood and define it 10,000 ways. But if the worst case is they're coming into kindergarten the same way they would have if they'd been home with mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, I mean, probably still fine. Those are good outcomes. Maybe
yeah.
it's the kindergarten, the first grade that need to be reevaluated. And I guess similarly with school, right? Who's deciding what's important and what is the worst case of self-directed education, right?
So I've
Yeah.
been wondering sorry, my earring just fell out. Liz, you just so I've been waiting for an opportunity to talk about what I'm about to say here, and I haven't known where to plop it yet, but maybe based on what you just said, so after COVID, when I started going back out on the road, I was really getting frustrated and I didn't really know why it was making me frustrated with people who called it, like the COVID, they're falling behind because of COVID, the falling behind myth, right? They're falling
Mhm.
behind. And then one day, I don't remember when, but I wrote it down. I was like, you know what? Nobody's behind. Nobody's behind. You know what has happened is that everybody reshifted, everybody recalibrated. This is what 3 and 4 year olds really are like. And we got so accustomed to treating them or expecting from them 5, 6, 7 year old behavior. Nobody's behind. You're finally getting like an age appropriate 2, 3, and 4 year old. It's the profession getting a smack in the face, and a huge recalibration prompt that has been needed and necessary for a very, very, very long time. So I think there's a parallel there, right? And how
Mhm.
I've never thought of it that way, Liz, that what we're calling low quality is like, if I had kids, it's what would have happened, right? Like, go play, go find, go get lost, go fall down and get hurt and come back. And you know what I'm saying? Like, and now show up and show up. And yeah, that's 100%. Kindergarten, are you
I had to
ready
find
for
that article.
me? Are you ready for
Yeah.
me? And I had a birth date, right? I'm 5 on or before the right date. So you have to take me. And I realize you
Mhm.
could, being under a rock for 5 years isn't what we're talking about here. And nor are we, romanticizing the whole kind of stay at home thing, because I know that's really difficult for a lot of people. And, that's a whole other conversation. But I had never really stopped to think that, what kids might just experience,
Yeah.
and I
I need
and
to
I
find
think,
that citation, but
oh
I'll put it in
yeah.
the notes for sure.
Show me your sources. I just trust you because you're brilliant like that. I'm not second guessing that at all. But I am recalling at some point, and I would not be able to tell everybody when, but Jeff and I unpacked why are we so like upset with being called babysitters. And I get why we are. Um, and the way he talked it through, I was like, okay, if we're calling babysitting that, like what you would get if you were at home with your mom or your grandma or your dad or your auntie, is it really such a bad thing? And maybe what we're out there glorifying is actually more of, the 4-letter word as opposed to the babysitter word. What are those expectations, and trusting the people who are involved in it. For 100 years, thousands of years, we trusted the primary caregiver to be able to do, for the most part, what we should be doing. um yeah, and then it shifted. Hmm.
Deep in thought over here. I'm still stuck on our recalibrating after COVID because I think COVID also gave us this new version of childhood that is unrestricted screen time while parents are stressed the F out. And I think that that is a different
Mhm.
childhood than we're imagining.
True. True. And I think within that conversation, there's probably like that could be a nice umbrella, and under that would be lots of different conversations. Um, but I think what in my world, my experience was what was being called regression was kids not knowing their letters and their numbers and their colors, when really they should have never been expected to be knowing that stuff in the first place. So that's
I
my
think that
now
Yeah.
depends on,
lens within that.
yeah, that's the age thing, right? You've got the kids coming into preschool in 2022, 2023 who had been home
Mhm.
versus the kids coming into first, second, third grade who've had, yeah, very different experience of screens and, Zoom kindergarten and whatnot.
Well, and
Yeah,
even
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't it, I mean, hindsight 2020 wouldn't have been awesome to gather data, right? If we had only known that COVID was happening and we could have been collecting all of this information and data and examples, and have more evidence, to base these grandiose statements that I make on it. I mean, I can't prove
So
it.
we've just come full circle to that needing to prove
Mhm.
concept. Here we
Nice.
are again. Like if we could have only taken data, and I think that the the real meat of this argument here is that like our concept of educational data has not progressed with the information of Bloom's taxonomy and of
Mm,
Orwell's taxonomy. Orwell's taxonomy or
Fink's taxonomy, or
oh,
Mel wrote the article about,
Fink. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you. Fink.
mhm.
And it's taxonomy? Fink's taxonomy. That's
Of
right.
significant learning, yeah.
Okay. I lost the paper between. I didn't bring my homework with me. My dog
Oh,
ate it.
your dog ate it?
gosh.
Okay.
No. So here we are. Like when we think about proof and concepts of like how do we compare these two groups of children to see like is their childhood different, is their learning experience different, the data that we have to base that on I don't think has caught up to the ideas of Bloom and Fink, right? We're
Mm.
still at that very formative knowledge, like all that we're pulling from that is knowledge. and look at all these other levels we could be pulling from, but there's not, I mean, I'm sure there are, but like it's not in the zeitgeist of educational research. So like how do you measure a creativity and analytical thinking in a
Mhm.
way that is reproducible, in a way that you can easily pull data from this group and this group, and in a longitudinal study doesn't actually take you 200 years, right? There's already this pool of data that comes from state testing that makes everything really easy for scientists. And so, like, how do we make these advances in the field easy for scientists? How do we make it fun for scientists? How do we make it play for scientists?
That's a good question.
I don't know the answer. That's your job, Lisa and Liz.
Oh, okay.
So the reason that I wanted to start recording about this, when I told you that I was going to complain about some things, I will be real vague about the complaining, but it is relating to being able to measure these objectives, the higher level taxonomic classifications in a way that doesn't take 10,000 years to get some data from a particular event. Because that's the issue, right? We can measure these. We can measure whether people are analyzing information, whether they're creating new things using this information and using the correct information. But it takes a really long time. You to sit and have a formative assessment of a young child or older child or adult is so much more time consuming than running a Scantron through a machine that spits out a number. And so then we're back to proving to funders why we need the brain power and the research assistants and your researcher to get this done. And then we're back
And it
to
comes back
why
to
do
the
we have
money,
education?
like,
Yeah.
right? Like, are we putting the taxpayers' money and the grantors' money into things that make a difference? And I think it starts as a very simple, honest, we want to fund things that make a difference. And then it just like we're playing telephone
Mm-hmm.
for decades. In the same way that Wild Spaces, have you seen that picture of like this is the woods that my grandma lived in, this is the woods that I live in, this is the woods that my children live in, and each one is like reduced in species diversity, but
Oh,
because you didn't ever experience that, you reference back to this frame of like, oh, when I was a kid, we had so many more bugs. I remember having to scrub bugs off of the grill of my mom's car for 10 years in a row, and I have never had to do that to my car. There's a real example. But then that is missing the exact same thought that my mom has, right? My mom thinks when I was out of my nose every time I rode a bike, like just that level of diversity. Um, we're doing that with education too, right? Like our researchers are doing that, our grantors are doing that. And so how I lost my train of thought after this, but like how do
No, no,
we
I got you still. I got you. It's the memory piece. You know, if
Mhm,
if if your memory of school is based on fourth grade, it's going to look
mhm.
very different than, what your children, the two of you, your children's fourth grade experience is going to be very different than your fourth grade experience, very different than my fourth grade experience. But we figure it's like third and fourth grade is what people bring to the table. Not a lot of people can go earlier than that. So when you talk about school and you talk about expectations and you talk about memory, especially play memory, it's really tricky for non-early childhood people to get past or to get younger than early elementary school. So 100%, that makes tons of sense. Back in my day, again, whole chapter in the book about it. Didn't think that it was going to infiltrate the third edition of the playbook that's coming out this fall, but it did. It did because that's what ends up back in my day. Well, when I first started speaking, it was this age group. And now nobody says back in my day anymore because it's not that they're pushing against the play, it's that they were never allowed to do it. So it's more like, I don't know what to do with what you're saying, Lisa, as opposed to thinking that something different should be happening than what I'm saying. It's been very interesting. So I would imagine that,
Mhm.
I think that mindset infiltrates everything. So of course it would
Yeah.
infiltrate funding and decisions and
Mhm.
curricular
Mhm.
choices and
Mhm.
expectations, all of that.
And I also think that personally, like most basic human condition is to want better for your children than you had. Even if you had like the perfect, best, most amazing childhood, you're wanting better for the next generation. And I think that we've jumped the shark again so far through our institutional telephone game here that we're describing, that the only frame of reference we have for we want better for our children is that means they got to know more stuff. That means they got to do it faster. Like there's no, we haven't, we've narrowed ourselves into this very slim level of Bloom's taxonomy that we don't have a frame of reference for anything else.
And then we're also on this like dialectical tension of telling the kids and anyone who will listen that this new generation doesn't know anything and can't do anything and can't write and can't read. Um,
And that's been happening since forever, right? The young kids, the
mhm,
kids of today, right?
Kids
That's
these days. Yeah.
right.
hmm
Uh, I have a friend who refers to them as the kids with a capital T and a capital K. Those kids, the kids. That
Oh.
that means something different than like the next generation of children that are coming our way.
But who gets to decide what's better? And who's
Yeah.
deciding that for us? What do people really have that agency of deciding what is better? Or is it peer pressure even now as 20 and 30 and 40-year olds of somebody else? Of course, yeah. It's
It's money.
And that's
It's money
and
decides.
it's not even about better, it's
Sorry.
about power. No, no,
Yeah.
I'm with you. It's about
Yep.
who has the power, who has the resources to restrict or unrestrict. I'm going back to the 80s when they decided that you can advertise to children now, actually. That's fine. And I think that was a huge moment that has contributed so immediately to a lot of what we were calling a screen time crisis is really a money crisis, a advertising crisis. And so even beyond the people who can say what's important do not have the same power as the people who can say, I want your attention and resources.
Hmm. Hmm. And the only people who get to decide for themselves are the ones that have the resources to not have to function within that system.
Who have the luxury of being able to say no. Like, no, no thanks. Nope, this is
Yeah.
what we're going to go do over here. We're going to do this.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. We can in here. That was just depressing.
It doesn't have to be depressing. I feel like our childcare system gets stuck in this like, oh, this is what decides everything. You know what would fix it is like, wouldn't it be great if it was fixed? There are ways to fix it. It just takes a
Mhm.
long time and resources and uh
I'm going to
yeah.
interrupt you. I think it also takes somebody with the courage and the confidence to be able to say, you know what? You want that? It's over there. But over here, this is what we're doing. As somebody
Yeah.
who is so confident. Were we talking about this last time? The confidence piece. I was talking about it with somebody and I forget who. But just
Hmm.
to be able to say, here's the line in the sand. And yes, Tiffany, I can prove it. Right here is the research. I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying because you were talking about that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if you're a person walking into my childcare center and you want to see the evidence, I can show you that. But I also can encourage you to listen to your gut and pay attention and use your senses to observe what's happening in this space. So if you really need to go check out the bigger, better, faster now, hurry up, get them ready, sexy bells, whistles, knock your bad self out. But here, your kids aren't going to be constipated. They're not going to be stressed. They're not going to be biting their nails off. They're not going to be throwing up Sunday nights. Like this is this works, and we know it works. Um, and it's
And how do you prove it?
well, do we call it a destination location, right? This is where the party is for a certain, I don't want to say a certain group of people because that's not what I was meaning to say. But for people who don't need to be convinced, here we are. Here we are. And if you
Mhm.
need to be convinced, here's my binder of references and citations and all of that business if you want, or you can trust me and just know that I wouldn't ever do anything that was not in your kid's best interest. But if you're drinking the Kool-Aid, but I'm not going to convince you. You got to go figure that out for your own self. So I do think there is an element of the people who do, dare we say, know better, to just put their money where their mouth is and say this is the space where that's going to
Yeah.
happen. And you know what? I mean, even when I had my child care center in New York, the Rochester City Schools was in the process of like you could have a pre-K program that got funded within your child care center. And I was like, why would I do that? Because what you expect in order to get your money, like there's no free money, right? There's no free lunch. You want the money, then you're gonna have to do something. And I think sometimes that's just I think there's a sense of surprise. Like the first time people realize, oh, 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 it's not just free money. No, it's not.
No,
There's
no,
something
yeah.
in exchange for that.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I think it can be worth it when it opens up access to people who would not have otherwise had it. So
Yeah,
Which
when
brings
we
100%.
in
as
some
adults
funding.
intentionally put ourselves in that position to say, I will be the intermediary and bend myself 15 different ways to keep play and developmentally appropriate practice in this classroom and check your boxes, it brings us to a more cohesive point than I think potentially keeping these programs so gate locked by
Yes.
financial means for families.
Which goes a little bit back to what we talked about last time about having people working in those spaces who know murder board how to
Yes.
apply the check your boxes language to the free play that is happening. And
Hmm.
right. And so that might mean that you're still taking some of that money and you have somebody in a position that's confident enough to say, let me show you how what you're seeing here might look a little different than what you're used to seeing, but I'm still checking all of your boxes. So have a seat and have some coffee and let me know if you have any questions. And I think that confidence piece, sorry, I'm sounding like a broken record, is like the secret weapon that we haven't really as a profession tapped into yet.
And is it because of a lack of, so the confidence came from the Ormel article
Yes.
because he was the one
Yeah.
who talked about having that
Ah,
deep
yes.
knowledge means that you're confident in
Hmm.
expressing that deep knowledge. Yes.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And
Nice full
so our
circle. Way to go.
Right? That's why she's the host, Tiffany, right? We're
Let me
just
pay her the
here for
big
the
bucks.
ride.
So are we training the adults in a way that lets them apply this to children and to their own work and to funders, right? Do we have that breadth of knowledge without requiring people specialize in wolf language, right?
Still having to prove ourselves, though. We're still proving
Yeah,
ourselves this whole time.
And that, I mean,
yeah.
that's not new. And there's that one article that I love to reference was from like 1992, 92 or 93, and it's called "If We Call It Science, Then Can We Let Them Play?" Like we've
Mm.
been, I mean, I've been in the profession 35 years, and this is not a new conversation. And I
Yeah.
remember the first time I realized that this conversation was happening when I thought it was new to me. But people who were above me were like, nope, we've been dealing with this for the last 50 years. Like, oh my God, wow, wow. And here we are this many years later, still dealing with it. And I think you age into it, Liz. I don't know if you necessarily maybe don't get taught it in your pre-service training, because I know that looks different in a lot of places. So I like to call it more pre-service as opposed to like college. But
Mhm.
but I think you do age into being more willing to tap into your experience and your experiential knowledge and be willing to close the door and just be like, I know what happens here is good stuff, and I'm going to try and protect as much as I can from having all that outside stuff infiltrate in here because that's not what is in the best interest of the children here in this particular classroom.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at the article. A confident response, in turn, acts as a sign that the student really understands. But the student isn't going to be able to deliver a confident response if the person, quote unquote, teaching isn't able to give a confident response. And I think a confident response isn't always that you know the right answer. I think a confident response can also be, you know what? I have no idea what you're talking about. Let me go do some research, or let me go do some digging, or let me go to the library or whatever. And being able again to sit in that space of not knowing, I think, is a sign of confidence just as much as being somebody who can recite something, from memory that might or might not be correct. Situational confidence comes into play.
Yeah,
I
the
have a lot of
to be
feelings. I have
willing.
a lot of baggage about this confidence argument because I feel like
Baggage.
this confidence argument is like a white male who's never been put into any box, but if I know things and I'm confident, everyone will respect me.
Oh, well, yeah, that's, I mean, I
Right.
don't know if you swear on your podcast, Liz, but that's a
Go
BS
ahead.
artist right there. I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
there's a lot of people who have no idea what ends up, but
Oh,
they appear very confident. Oh, yeah, yeah,
right,
100%.
right,
So yeah,
right.
I'll concede, I'll stand down, I'll do what we got to do there. Um, and maybe I'm just naively applying the word confident, meaning like I've read the articles, right? I've read the books, I have the
Right.
experience, I know my stuff. I'm not intentionally misleading. I'm not using my position of the person in front of the room to take advantage or do anything that you just shouldn't be doing. So yeah, that's my naive baggage upbringing of just assuming
Where
that.
it's perceived as confidence and not anger, and it's perceived as confidence and not like
Yeah.
Low self-esteem.
Not
questioning or
defensiveness.
meek
Yeah.
or low self-esteem or defensiveness. Like it's perceived as confidence and not a lady trying to tell you what to do. Like
Right.
there's a lot of layers that go into
Mhm.
confidence. But I think
Okay.
when we're like able to like lovely utopia, a student is confident, then yes, I fully agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we clarified that. To everybody
Hmm.
who's listening,
Hmm.
there's a huge asterisk of clarification for the last 2 minutes
Yes.
on the podcast.
Confidence versus hubris. We need to tease that apart a little bit. And
Yeah. Yeah. Confidence requires systems that allow you to have that confidence in the first place.
Well, yeah, I think that's a whole conversation, right? Confident in being
Yeah.
able to realize I have no idea about this particular topic, right? So I'm going to go find somebody who
Hmm.
does. And then
Hmm.
I'm going to either inform myself or something I've gotten better at in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so is bringing them in, right? Instead of learning from you and adding it to me, let's just sit right here and let you be the one who talks
Yeah,
about,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so adults do need to know things. We don't need to just put words on their learning, and they need to be the
Correct.
ones who are equipped to do the hard work and not just the behaviorist measurements. Yeah.
Correct. And I think that this is where we have a really delightful chance to push up in a way that we don't push up usually, right? There's all this
Exactly.
kindergarten pushback,
Mm.
but for some reason we're rolling over and taking it when it comes to adult education. So how do we push back in a way? Well, maybe not push back. We just talked about lots of lovely ways that you can know the wolves and push back, but like how do we make that a stance that we can hold and not just in my I'll advocate in my one session, right? Like adult
Mhm.
education is not brought along in the same pocket as early childhood education, and I feel like they are both very good indicators of the system as a whole. I don't know, man. I'm just finishing my coffee.
Well, I mean, it probably sounds utopian and idealistic, but you start small, and then there's that bright, right? I light your candle and you go light a candle and you go to light a candle, and it does circle back to the notion that it takes absolutely forever. And it might not feel like it's working big picture wise, but I know there's pockets. It's I mean it's not dismal and dire everywhere. I mean there are
Yeah,
pockets of
that's very true.
amazing stuff that's happening. So where are we putting our attention? Are we spreading some of the good, amazing awesomeness around, or are we just letting it exist in a vacuum? Are we dismantling some of those, not dismantling in a negative way, but if there's a lot of good stuff happening over here, then let's figure out how to like spread. Money's like manure. It's not doing anybody any good unless you spread it around. And I think the good work that's happening in early childhood, it's the same way. Let's spread it around. Like I was very sad when my child care center had to close. Very, very sad. But you know what the amazing thing was at the end of the day is all of my staff went and infiltrated other childcare centers and preschools in the area. And so, yeah, what we were doing was fantastic. But then it started to happen in other places. And I mean, I don't know, maybe that is too idealistic, but I know it works. It just takes a while. But
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
can't make anybody be motivated. You can't make anybody want to go learn the words. You can't lock people in the room and teach them Bloom's taxonomy words. I mean, you can, but is it going to stick? Probably not. Probably
Mhm.
not unless they're emotionally invested in it. But, there's always a back door. Maybe we just haven't found it yet. Maybe we just haven't found the hook that makes that person see how and why it is relevant to them and their personal experience. And I think being willing to stick with it, that persistence is something that needs to happen too. Like this didn't work, it didn't work here. Okay, but what might work? Or it worked for 20% of the people in the room, but the other rest didn't. Okay, so let's keep trying instead of just saying this is how I know how to do it. I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
and to me, this is good teaching. And I said that last time too. It's like this is just what we all should be doing, whether they're 3 year olds or whether they're 30 year olds. If the
Yeah.
people are not responding, then at
Hmm.
some point if you're on your fourth marriage, at some point it's not them. You know what I mean? It's at some point you got to turn the mirror around and be like, maybe it's me. Maybe these laminated lesson plans from 1972 just aren't, maybe they're falling short. Okay, so what do we got to do about it? What do we have to do? And how do we cast that net to get people to see that it might not be them personally, but that their practice needs to adjust. Your practice needs to adjust so you can cast a wider net and have people start to see that this is timely, relevant, real, and meaningful for them. So what does that mean? You got to bring somebody else in. You got to change up the lesson plan. You got to change up the textbook. That flexibility piece to me is a huge part of it.
Right. And being willing to see yourself as a professional, whether that is a professional in the classroom or the professional leading the classrooms, as able to ask questions of the people around you and ask questions of yourself and make those take your ego out of it as much as you can, right? Because I think for all of us, our work and our egos are fairly close and making some assumptions, but work and ego are related to varying degrees. And being able to say, oh, I've been going about this the wrong way. I've been doing this less effectively than I
Hmm.
could be, and it's potentially harmful to children and or other people in this space.
Yeah, and how not to get butt hurt, right? It's the old Mr. Rogers. How do you
Mhm.
separate then the behavior from the actual person? And are you like we can all verbalize that. We can all to the
Mhm.
end. I mean, we all know how to do that. It's the behavior, not you. But how often, even as a grown up, even though we know they're like using good technique and good strategy on us, we still hear it as, something personal, something me, not the behavior.
Yeah.
It's hard to separate that, even when we know better.
I'm going to introduce one very final plug for Fink before we wrap up. I do love that two pieces of his taxonomy of significant learning were learning how to learn about this particular subject matter and the human dimension. So, because I do think when you expand beyond your ego into like, ouch, yeah, I was doing this wrong, and I care about these people in my classroom, it makes such a huge difference than just being able to apply new knowledge and evaluate and create, even though those are also important.
Yeah. I mean, even just being a part of the last two episodes and learning about stuff that, I mean, I didn't even know that some of this stuff existed. And again, casting that wider net of, hey, I can apply this. I can stay up and not, I can have everything we talked about over the last hour in my brain for the rest of the day, not sleep tonight. And at some point, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, I know there's going to be a reason for me to circle back to this in some capacity. And now I'm going to feel more confident because I have another, I hate the tool in the tool belt metaphor, but I've got something, another resource that I'm able to share when appropriate.
Okay, final thoughts.
I love the tool in the toolbox. I love the paintbrush in the cup. I love thinking about teachers and care workers as artisans instead of anything else.
So
But yeah.
elaborate. I don't know the paintbrush one, Liz, if you don't mind
Oh,
indulging here. I don't know the
I
paintbrush.
just made it up. That's why. You're an artist. You got a bunch of paintbrushes in the cup. You got a cool new paintbrush, and you put it in your cup. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's satchel. I'm sure there's a better word for it.
I know what
Tool
you
in the
mean.
toolbox, paintbrush in the satchel. It works
Yeah,
because we're artisans. We
right. And
add new
what
skills
brush?
to our skill set. Yeah, what
Yeah.
brush are you gonna pick?
What brush do I need? And I'm going to be more effective if I have a couple more brushes or a couple. If I only have one brush, right? That's the old tool thing, right? Give a kid a hammer and
Yeah.
everything becomes a nail. So you got to at some point broaden it. And there's tools in my tool
Yes.
belt that I don't reach for anymore at all, but they're still there
Uh-huh.
just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case. Or maybe I moved it in the back. That's, it's harder to
Yeah.
reach. Whereas when it was
Yeah.
front
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
center,
Yeah.
it was just your default setting.
Hmm.
And
I
I
like
think,
I think there's an element of play with that too, that like just because you have a hammer and a nail, like it's fun to play with your new finishing hammer that is smaller and tiny and can do tinier nails. And this one has a very narrow tip on the bent so we can inset the nail. Like, are you having fun with your tool set?
always.
Always.
Well, yeah, I mean, why bother having one if you're not going to use it?
Yeah.
Now
Sorry, I took us
quantify
off
it so we
real
can
quick.
fund tools for everybody else. And
Yes, everyone needs this exact same paintbrush. Don't you know?
Come on, man. And it's the tool brush, it's the paintbrush we got in 1985.
And it's been scrubbed down to nubs.
We just
Missing
got
half the hairs.
three bristles left. But damn it, it's my favorite one. Well, it's your only
It
one.
works once. It'll work again.
all right, thank you guys. And thank you,
Thanks
listeners, for
having
hanging
us
on with us for while we extend analogies, silly places.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.